Hey, what is up, everybody? So we're playing Cracking Combo today. If you haven't seen this deck before, I've made a couple videos about it in the past. It's a pretty fun deck. It's not going to be super uber competitive, but it can run away with some games. It's a lot of fun, so let's just jump into what we're looking at. We're playing Cracking. Obviously, it's a King Combo deck. It's a 5/8 for 2 water. When you cast this Cracking, you can target up to 2 unoccupied slots in your opponent's Elestrals row. Those Celestial slots cannot be used as long as Cracking's enchanted. So if we get 2 Crackings in play and our opponent's board is empty, they will not be able to play any Elestrals until they destroy Cracking. The goal of the deck is to get 2 of those into play at the same time on turn 1. And yes, as early as turn 1, we can do that with the rest of this deck. So let's jump into how that is. We are going to use Tadpuff, which is 1/1 for 1 water, but we don't care about stats because we can expend water in order to special cast it from our hand in attack position, allowing us to now use our normal to ascend our Tadpuff into Cracking. And that's our first Cracking. The second Cracking, if we want to do this on 1 turn, is going to have to be done with Golden Apple of Discord and Rise from the Ashes. So Golden Apple of Discord, we can discard a card from our hand, which is going to be Cracking, to discard a random card from the opponent's hand, which is nice disruption, and mill 2 cards from their deck to their underworld. That allows us to get Cracking into our underworld, where we can then use Rise from the Ashes to target it in our underworld and special cast it in attack position, giving us our second Cracking. And if it's turn 1, our opponent won't be able to respond to this, and they'll have 4 Elestral zones locked out and be unable to play Elestrals. So now you're wondering, well, can't they just play runes? And the answer to that is yes. So our answer to runes are going to be Poseidon, which we can cast it with up to 3 water, and Nexus 1 water from Poseidon. But when we use Trident Poseidon, we can empower an Elestral to give it 2 attack, and it can't be targeted by counter runes, which is nice. But then as well, if we have Poseidon out, as long as Poseidon's enchanted, opponents can't cast counter runes, which is extremely relevant. So if we use our 2 Crackings, Trident Poseidon, and Poseidon, our opponent can only ever answer our Cracking with Resting on Your Laurels and Earthquake and nothing else. So if they are not playing Resting on Your Laurels or Earthquake, they can no longer win the game if we get those 4 cards in play. That being double Cracking, Poseidon, and Trident Poseidon. And we, in order to do that, are running a massive draw engine. Basically every draw card in the game at 1 or 2 that we can run in this deck. Starting with Aphros, which is a 2/4 for 1 water. We can Nexus up to 2 water. When you do, you draw a card for each water that you receive this way. With Poseidon and Trident Poseidon, it's going to be pretty online. Pretty commonly to draw us 2 cards for almost free. So solid water draw card. Drataya, another draw card. It's another 2/4 for 1 earth. When a player casts Ambrosia, you can draw 2 cards. Ambrosia being returning up to 3 spirits from your underworld to your spirit deck. It's another kind of free draw, and we're running Ambrosia because the deck gets a little expensive. More draw power. Nectar Gods draws 2 cards. Drops the Leaf lets us cycle cards from our hand back to our deck and draw the same amount of cards. It's pretty useful because we can just ship away all the extra Afroses, Dratayas, and other non-combo cards from our hand back into the deck to find what we need to play the game. So that's our draw package. Then you might be thinking, well, what happens if we go second and we can't actually block our opponent's rows before they get to use them? And that's when we are going to use Earthquake or Resting on Your Laurels. The amount of each is a little up for debate, but generally Resting on Your Laurels is great at going second. If your opponent plays any other Elestral plus rune, like maybe Demeter plus Viserys, we'll be able to turn our Resting Laurels online, which the Resting Laurels can only be cast if an opponent has at least 2 more enchanting spirits than you. So if we have an empty board, they have 2 spirits, we can target and destroy an opponent's Celestial with it. Earthquake, there's no restriction to destroy effect, but it is much more costly, and our deck already is pretty expensive, so I like to run less Earthquakes unless I need it for the matchup. And then the last 2 cards in deck are running Tsunami, again, a little bit of backup strategy, and Atlantis, because another backup strategy we have with this deck is if we can't get our Crackings out, we could potentially just stack an Aphros or 2 with Water Spirits and use Atlantis to give it a huge attack buff and just go kind of really tall aggro with Aphros. It's a little dangerous because we don't have Poseidon, Trident Poseidon out. They can just bounce our Aphros to hand, or they can just remove it with Elestral effects or Resting on Laurels or Earthquake. So the backup strategy is still weak to resting on laurels and earthquake, but at least there's more strategy involved than just always running out the cracking. So yeah, that is the deck. It's a pretty fun deck, and I would like you guys to see some games with it. Hey, so this is normally where I would put gameplay for the deck I just talked about, but the official Elestrals Discord just posted my game with this deck on their YouTube. So just check the links below. There'll be gameplay on the links below for this deck. The one from the official Elestrals site and some tabletop simulator games that I played a while ago. So check out those instead. Normally at the end of these videos, I'll have actual gameplay. Just not this case because I want to get this video out because they just posted themselves. Have a good one.